and get started. So, hi everybody. My name is Daniel Barrera Ortega, and I'm the program specialist at the SGSO Network. And I'm also joined by our ED Trisana Perkle. Trisana, do you want to say hello? Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Excited for this discussion.
Yeah, so again, we're super excited to have you here today for our virtual gathering on pivoting operations and programming. And again, this is in response to all of the changes that have happened in the past few months. And so we want to give a space to share solutions, ideas, and again, just pieces of wisdom, because I know that we are all still reacting to all of the changes that are constantly happening. And what better way to address that if not in community? So thank you all again for being here. Just a couple housekeeping announcements. Um, Thank you for introducing yourself in the chat, and if you're joining in, please continue to drop in the chat your name, where you're tuning in from, what organization you're representing. The slides for this presentation will be shared in the chat as well as in our webinar recording on our website. So this call will be recorded. You will have access to it moving forward. And then we will have a Q&A portion at the end of today. So feel free to drop questions in the chat as they come up. We're collecting them and then we will share them with the presenters and with a slightly different format once we get to our open discussion piece of our activities today. So what you can expect today is our welcome. So welcome. We're going to do a quick check-in connection activity. And we will then move on to just an overview of resources that the SGSO network has to support you that are related to the topic, as well as just in general, the things that we offer to support your work in school gardens. We'll move on to presentations from our prepared presenters today. And we will have a Q&A session for presenters. So if you have a question for all the presenters, kind of in a panel style, we will talk more about that once we get there. And then we will close with an open discussion time. So if you have a piece of a solution or a resource, or a question for the group, you'll have an opportunity to come off mute and address the group as a whole in a kind of like a very conversational style discussion. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and just move into our check-in for today, our connection activity. So we're going to go into breakout rooms. So please join your breakout room and introduce yourself. We're going to do this in pairs for about 3 minutes. So just first introduce yourself, your name, your location, your role in your organization, and feel free to say one or two sentences about your organization. And then this is a space for us to really connect and talk with each other. So how is your organization doing? Some things that you can talk about. How is your organization doing with the changes? Did you change programming for this upcoming school year? And if so, how has that changed? This is also, again, for us to really show up as whole members of the network and as folks working the school garden movement. So feel free to be raw and everything that comes up, especially because we will move into a more solution-based approach after this check-in conversation. So please feel free to share how you're feeling, how you're doing, how your organization's doing. So we're going to be in breakout rooms for about 3 minutes. So they will open up in a couple of seconds. Welcome back, everybody. I don't know if there's ever enough time to check in and chat. So I hope you got enough time to talk and connect before we move on to the rest of our agenda for today. And please feel free to shout out your buddies, your room buddy, in the chat, or if any cool connections or tidbits came from your conversation, please shout them out in the chat. We want it to be going off, as the kids say. I'm sorry. We're going to move on to our next piece of today, which is just a quick overview of the resources that the SGSO network has to support your programs and to support your programming that are both just in general to support, as well as things that are very specific to this topic. If you really want to continue connecting with folks Just like you did today, kind of every month or at a cadence, we highly recommend you check out or join one of our peer learning communities or affinity groups. These are member organized groups, they're member directed, and they come together to talk shop at a cadence that they decide. So some examples of these affinity groups are for elementary, middle, and high school educators, program managers and program directors, for folks that work in statewide farm to school or school garden networks, or for folks that work at a district office. And this is just a sampling of the many topics that are represented in our peer learning communities, as well as affinity groups. And just a reminder that, of course, for an affinity group, you have to be of the identified identity to join this group. So highly recommend if you really want to continue connecting with folks in a similar role or capacity as you. Or if you want to start one, you can just send if you would like to start one, you can send an email to info@sgsonetwork.org, and we can follow up with next steps if you feel like there's a new community that needs to sprout that you'd like to connect with as well. Another really great way to communicate directly with the network is by using the SGSO Network forum. So this is a Google group where anyone can drop questions, resources directly to the membership. Right now is about 1,090 people strong, and you can also receive a report, a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly report of what is happening in the Google group. So this is a great place to communicate, share resources, share exciting opportunities with the wider network. Really great way to communicate, really peer-to-peer, directly peer-to-peer. Then also I hope many of you read it, but we do have a newsletter as well as a newsletter archive. So we send a bi-monthly newsletter that is it is a deep dive into a specific school gardening topic. So some examples include building school garden cultures, storytelling and sharing impact, how do we fund school gardens, or creative funding resources. And again, every newsletter is archived on our website. So there will be a link in the chat as well to access the newsletter. So if you haven't subscribed, you can, and you can browse all of our past offerings when it comes to newsletters. Lots of really great resources. And I don't say that because I write them. I might be biased, but they're really great resources. I hope you take advantage of them. We also have our promising practice, and excuse me while I exit our screen share because I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of our promising practices. And our promising practices are curated resource guides. They're a culling of expertise over the years from many school garden experts, divided in different topic areas. So 1 second while I navigate to our website. And there we go. Specifically today, we're highlighting the staffing models promising practice. So this promising practice specifically addresses staffing models. Again, we have many different topics, but this one feels really relevant to today. And some of the things that you can find in a promising practice is key strategies or key elements connected to this promising practice. So for example, in this promising practice, you can see that there's big high-level takeaways as well as strategies, a summary of strategies that have worked, as well as challenges that many SGSOs have found when it comes to staffing, different staffing models. Continuing down, you can also find other summaries or more snapshots or case studies. Every promising practice is set up a little bit differently, but this one shows different avenues of staffing as well as their pros and cons with an associated resource library. So for example, when we're talking about parent and community volunteers, you can see there's pros of how this is successful as well as challenges and sample descriptions for volunteer positions. This is also true for different models such as high school buddy teaching, community service programs, or college interns. And as I mentioned, there's relevant links as well as resource libraries for each relevant topic. Continuing on down, and the link will be dropped in the chat shortly. So you can browse it on your own time, or there's also a link, I believe, in the slides. But continuing on down, there's actual deeper dive case studies. Different organizations, what is their budget, what is their scope of programming, and you're able to read deeper into what are their key findings, what are the things that they really tried and worked out really well for them. And there's several different examples of each of types of organizations and type of setting, programming, what they offer. And once again, this is one of our many promising practices. So we have different ones, some including funding, building relationships for program success, sharing impact, professional development models. So please, there are treasure troves of resources. I highly recommend that you go in and check out all of the different things that you can find within them. I'm really quickly going to switch back to our slides. Oop, here we go. And once again, all of the different components you can find in our promising practices. Finally, beginning the school year, lots of exciting things happening, and these are other calls that you can participate in with the SGSO network. Upcoming, we do have a webinar. In September that is launching our Leadership Institute, SGSO Leadership Institute webinar series. So this is a series that features members of our SGSO Leadership Institute, a week-long leadership training retreat that we offer that is hosted by Life Lab in California in partnership with Whole Kids, a project of Whole Foods Market Foundation, as well as the SGSO network. And it's focused on youth as food justice leaders on Wednesday, September 24th. The link for this will be in the chat. So how do we empower youth through a really amazing program that Growing Hope in Ypsilanti, New York offers to be drivers and teachers of food justice. Additionally, if you like a deeper dive into our resources, our programming, and give feedback on what you like for the network to do for you, definitely join our fall open house. It will be on September 17th. This is, again, a great way to continue connecting with members, really a deeper dive into what the network does, what we offer, and how you can get involved as well. And also networking time to connect with other members, as I mentioned. So we would really love for you to join us then. And lastly, and excitingly, if that's the word, we're gearing up for the Growing School Gardens Summit 2026. So this is a biannual national conference of peer-to-peer learning for school garden professionals and really to invigorate the school garden movement. And it is hosted by the Sprouts Healthy Communities Foundation in partnership with Life Lab and the SGSO network. It'll take place on February 19th through the 22nd in 2026 in Phoenix, Arizona, which is home turf for Sprouts markets. So it's lots of really exciting opportunities there. And registration will open soon in September. So definitely go to their website, sign up for the e-list so you can really get it right in your inbox once registration opens. It does sell out. It does sell out. So definitely sign up and register in advance. Really one of the best conferences. And please, if you've been, definitely chime in the chat. One of the best conferences I've ever attended. So I'm biased, I apologize. But highly recommend that you attend. That is enough from me. I'm gonna now move into our presentation, our prepared presentations. Really excited to share with you all this expertise that we have lined up for you today. And again, if any questions come up, please definitely drop it in the chat so then we can give it to our presenters during the Q&A portion. So without further ado, apologies. Without further ado, I would love to pass it over to our first presenter of today, which is Vicki Moore. So please, Vicki, take it away.
All right. Yeah, this is really exciting. I'm pretty new to SGSO, so I'm really, really happy to be here. So yeah, Living Classroom was founded back in 2007, and we support approximately 24 schools in Santa Clara County, which is part of Silicon Valley. And we have had almost since the beginning kind of a way of pivoting with changing times. And if you want to go ahead to the next slide, we'll just dive right into it. So I'll just start out by saying that unlike some organizations, we've not been impacted directly by the federal changes of federal funding. With the exception of 1 year, we have not actually employed AmeriCorps, and we've had a basically hired, high-level, long-term staff, salaried and hourly staff for our programs. And what we've done is we've learned that sometimes establishing a program in a particular school district doesn't last long term. And so what we do is we have this hub model with our programming. So we have the ability to expand or contract by establishing, if we can establish a hub, which means like a base office with approximately 3 staff in that office, in a cluster of 5 or more schools that are geographically close to each other. And it's usually within the same school district, but not always necessarily. Then we have the funding established, and we have MOUs established with these 5 or more schools. Then we create this hub. And so we have done this model now for well over 10 years. And part of what we do is we say, well, we are a lean and mean organization. We have low overhead, and you, the school district, we're providing these services to you. And we ask that you provide free space for our staff, storage space for our lesson kits, a sink, a fridge, etc., that we need to operate our program, out of their actual school district facility. And so far, every district has had even just a small office space where 3 people can work. And then as we expand our programming, let's say in the Palo Alto School District, where we used to have a program, we hire and train the staff to operate that program. And again, it's all based on having the budget to proceed. And that is depending on how much money is available. Sometimes we get 100% of cost covered. Sometimes we get 30% cost covered, and we make it up with other grants. And we have our program director, who also is an instructor. We have an assistant who does instruction and lesson kit work. And we have a garden maintenance, horticulturally trained gardener. And of course, we provide a lot of ongoing training to make sure that they're on board. But with this model, we've attracted some really high caliber staff, including certificated teachers, as well as one person who was a former school principal. So it's very much mission based. We can go to the next slide. And so this is just a little bit of the background that in the recent past, we actually had the 3 different hubs, and we had to pivot because after about 5 years, the Palo Alto program, budget issues, some things blew up, and they're like, sorry, can't afford you anymore. And unfortunately, in that case, we had to terminate the contracts of the 3, in that case, 2.5 staff positions. And same thing in the Campbell Union District a few years later. And so right now we're a smaller program, and we have one large hub for 15 schools. We have another 9 schools that operate in a different district. And the good news is they love the program so much they internalized it and say, hey, we're going to take it over as part of our school district programming. And so if you add all that, we're at 24 schools. We are currently in the phase where we are looking at expanding to 1 or 2 additional school districts in the area and trying to proactively develop a three-pronged funding model where the school district provides at least a third of the funding, and we look for, in some cases, healthcare providers that have funding for healthy youth, and garden-based instruction obviously is key with that. And then we also seek whether there's an educational foundation or a community foundation or other sources of funding to make up the other anywhere from 2/3 to half of the cost to serve schools, particularly Title I schools. And so this model allows us, like I said, to have that flexibility, and we have our veteran staff playing a key role as part of their job description of doing the training, overseeing, launch of a new program, and then in each new program, of course, uh, recruiting volunteers for both our programming educational lessons, which are approximately 1 hour each, as well as garden work. So anyway, this has been a model that we've used, not related to federal funding, but related to the ups and downs that occur with the ups and downs in school district financial situations, right? And so it's worked pretty well. And we may be back up to a 3-hub program in the next few years if we can, negotiate what we need and get some funding in place. So yeah, we do spend a lot of time in doing grants and seeking those longer term funders. And the healthcare organizations have been a really important part of that. One of our funders has provided over 10 years in a row of about 1/3 of our budget costs for our current program. So I will stop there. I hope this all makes sense to you, but this is the way we pivot when things change at our school district level.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vicky. And please join me in giving Vicky a round of applause. And now we will go to our next presenter, which is Ashley Martinez. So Ashley, please take it away.
Sounds good, guys. Can everybody hear me? Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry, our Wi-Fi here is terrible sometimes. So my name is Ashley Martinez. I am a garden educator for the Rio School District. I fell into this work as a member of Food Corps. I did that for 2 years, and last year was the end of my 2nd year with Food Corps. So as I started preparing, what's next with Food Corps, that's when all of the budget cuts started hitting and everything started going a little bit crazy. So Food Corps essentially had to scale back, and Rio School District, the school district that I was partnered with, they unfortunately lost their partnership with Food Corps. So they immediately had to go into, a little bit of emergency mode to try to figure out how to make this work. So for the summer, I stayed on and they hired me as a sub to help maintain all 6 of the school gardens that were currently established. Then at the end of the summer, I got pulled into a meeting to find out that they were able to create a permanent position with me. So immediately I was like, one, how did you do that? Because where'd you pull funds from? So they got creative with funding. And as I'm saying it right now, I just remembered, Daniel, I was supposed to find out from Lacey what that tunnel funding was from. But it's a school nutrition funding that the school nutrition department was able to allocate funds for educators. So our programming is going to be shifting a little bit this year. They were only able to bring on 2 full-time for school gardens, and one will be hybrid at one school garden and on our district farm, because we do have a district 10-acre farm that we are currently working on. So there's technically 3 positions that does not meet the need of the district currently. So if you go to the next slide, our program, we were able to get those 3 permanent positions, but again, it didn't cover all of the needs that the district has for the programming they've put in place. So what they've started doing, and we have this going to the board next month, they have partnered with local community gardens and master gardeners to try to establish partnerships, and they are creating roles that are grant funded to supplement what they're able to do. So those partnerships have turned out to be critical because those partnerships are also going to go into long-term partnerships on our farm. So for example, we have a local garden that specializes in natural habitats, pollinators, native plants and that type of thing. So they are going to be partnering with the school and putting in the infrastructure for what they need to expand all the pollinator gardens. And then they'll be able to do teaching and develop their curriculum for their program in our spaces with our students. And then, you know, give and take a little bit, they're also going to be executing some of our predetermined lessons that we already have scheduled in with our students too. So we're helping each other get through this time. So lean into those community partnerships and the grant funding with the community gardens specifically has been another avenue of funding that we've been able to pull from. So what that looks like for me on an individual basis is I'm taking on more schools in the meantime. So ideally they want to have one educator full-time at each school. For the last 2 years, I've been able to manage 2 schools. Currently, I've got 3 pending, pending a 4th one. So it does mean I'm having to take on a little more work in the meantime until we get those additional grant funded roles pushed through by the district board. So that has just meant having to zoom out of my monthly calendar a ton. So instead of working 2 weeks in advance, I have to have my whole month planned out before the month even hits the ground. So I'm trying to work a month in advance. Definitely a lot more communication. We're leaning really heavily into universal infrastructure for all of the educators. So we all have Google calendars that are individual to us. We give access to our school principals so they know when we're going to be on site without us having to send emails every week like, hey, I'll be at your school site on these days from this times. We have a calendar. We give you access. You can see exactly when we're going to be teaching at your school, which teachers we're teaching, what time they're teaching, and what we're teaching. So yeah, just a lot of planning ahead. Next slide. So one of the things that I'm also working on in the meantime, in response to the budget cuts, we got cuts to our supplies. So we're not going to be able to have access to a lot of the supplies we have. So I've been working on a project through my seed project with Food Corps called the Sustainable School Garden, where I'm trying to develop curriculum over the next year to year and a half to bring in things like how do you build soil? How do you make soil without going and buying compost? How do you make your school garden using composting, upcycling, seed saving, so you don't have to go buy seeds and plants and all of that fun stuff. So that's going to be the other way that we are pivoting as a district, is making our need for funds lower.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. Just, just want to double check. I'm not cutting you off, right?
No, you're good. I muted myself.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ashley. Please,
You're
everybody,
welcome.
join me in giving Ashley a big round of applause. And we will continue with our next presenter, which is Rebecca. So please, Rebecca, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here. So I'm Rebecca Henriksen. I'm the only garden educator in my district currently, and I'm also the farm to school manager. We're a district of about 9,000 students in Eastern New York State, Capital Region, and I support 16 school gardens, a greenhouse, soon to be 4 orchards, and Sugar Bush. We do a maple sugaring program on 5 campuses. If you could do the next slide, please. So I particularly wanted to talk about our summer programming because I think this was kind of a key pivot that is now preparing me for the oncoming year. So I depend really on a lot of federal grants, almost all of which have been cut or like totally eliminated or put on hold. And summer enrichment was an integral part of my programming. I was fully integrated into summer enrichment program, which served about 2,000 students or so. Every single one of those students got farm to school, particularly garden centered farm to school programming, either through myself or 5 of my community partners who I would bring in. So about 2 weeks before the school year ended and 3 weeks before summer enrichment started, I was told that because the funding had gone away, and the student population had been cut from over 2,000 to 700 students, and we were contracting out rather than the district running the program as was traditionally done. They had contracted out to another party that was doing more like a day camp experience, and they weren't interested in the farm to school programming. And there were various other stuff that came up. But in any case, I had to do a complete pivot. So I came up with this idea of getting the garden workshops. So I reached out to multiple school buildings on the elementary level as well as secondary level and asked them if I could host getting the garden workshops on site at their buildings that were open to not just their school families, but to the general public as well, although children, child oriented. And again, this is in the last week of school, so principals were pretty busy, but I did hear back from a few buildings who said, yes, please, we would love that. And so I pivoted to these workshops. So this also allowed me to bring in my community partners, give them some money. So I've been doing this programming for over 5 years now. So my partners had really become um, really reliant on these summer funds. For some of them, this is a slower time of year for them in terms of teaching and so forth. So I was glad to still be able to retain those partnerships, give them some money, still utilize them, and I brought them in. We went into the only district program that was still being run by district was our camp for our behavioral students. So these are students who are usually in self-contained rooms during the school year. So I worked with those students once or twice a week. The days I wasn't there, my partners were there, and that we focused on therapeutic lessons and curriculum in the garden, and it was a huge success. At the other school sites, we were integrated either into summer tutoring. So they were trying to incentivize students to come to the building to do summer tutoring in reading and math by offering them after the tutoring and activity hands-on. So we got students at one of my sites through that. And at the other 2 sites, there was nothing else going on during the summer. And so that was just, heavily advertised to school families as well as to the wider community. You can go to the next slide, Daniel. Thank you. So just some highlights of this. Again, I was able to use these partners and throw them some money, not the amounts they were habituated to from me, but was still able to use them and keep those relationships. And they were very grateful for that. And most of them are from other nonprofits, so they were very understanding. They're also being impacted by cuts. An unexpected surprise was that because I opened this up to the wider community, a lot of families with younger children showed up because these were drop-in programs rather than drop-off. Children had to be accompanied by an adult, except for the behavioral program because there was obviously school staff present. So we had a lot of younger children show up who weren't even ready for pre-K yet. And that was extremely positive. These kids had a great experience. I had many of them come back week after week after week. And I ran this program for 6 weeks, by the way. And then the families came away with a really positive impression, made connections to the school gardens. Many of them signed up to volunteer, even though their students are not yet enrolled in our district. And also we're really excited to see their child like, oh, I can picture my kid at this school, and I'm not so worried about sending them to our schools. So that was really positive, and the district was extremely happy about that part of it. It also really encouraged students to attend tutoring at the one school. So that was also a benefit to our district and to those students at that school. And overall, I thought it was a really positive experiment. On average, we had about 10 to 30, kind of a wide range there, but it kind of depended on the school and the site and how well they advertised it to families. But we had regularly 10 to 30 kids show up. So that was great. And also an added benefit for me was those 4 sites got a lot more care, their gardens, during a really, really dry summer. We have a volunteer kind of operation during the summer for all of our school gardens because I can only get to so many with my interns. But those 4 gardens are looking amazing, and I normally wouldn't have spent as much time in them. So that was an added benefit. And I think that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I was really excited. I remember when we talked about this, just like the importance of maintaining relationship. It's such a big deal to keep it in. So thank you so much, Rebecca. Big round of applause from me and from all of us. So thank you so much for sharing. And we will close our prepared presentation, our prepared presentation portion of today, with Nicole. So please, Nicole, take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Gelb-Dugas. I'm the Executive Director of Schoolyard Roots, and we are located in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. We bring learning to life through hands-on teaching gardens that are located in 12 elementary schools across 2 school districts. And all of our programming happens during the regular school day so that we ensure that every student in our schools gets to participate in programming. So we see 4,300 students a year between kindergarten and 5th grade. Could you go to the next slide, Daniel? So I'm here today to talk about how we pivoted our staffing model from a model that relied heavily on AmeriCorps and grant-tied positions to a model that is more reliant on full-time salaried positions. This is a shift we actually made quite a while ago, but it seems really relevant now with all of the grant-tied positions that are where funding is being eliminated. So I wanted to talk about why we did it and how we did it. And also just that for us, shifting away from this model actually ended up being a huge asset to the sustainability and stability and quality of our programs. So we used to have 6 AmeriCorps positions that did everything from teaching in school gardens to garden maintenance to also capacity building, like writing grants, doing marketing for us. And about 5 years ago, we decided that we needed to make a change because it was a super challenging model for us. I think many of you know that it's like almost a full-time job to recruit and hire and train new staff members every year. For us, we were having about 50% of our staff or more turnover annually because we had 6 AmeriCorps or grant type positions and then 3 full-time positions. So it was a lot of turnover. Additionally, a lot of our folks who came in through AmeriCorps or grant type positions were not tied to our community, which meant that they came in for a year and then left. And sometimes we would even have folks leave, in the middle of a term because they got an opportunity for a better paying job, which, absolutely we supported them in that. AmeriCorps is tough, but it's still a difficult place to be as an organization. So we decided to make a change because we wanted to have a model that felt more sustainable and stable. We wanted to invest more in relationships with the people who we were doing programming with instead of having in a sort of like rotating door of staff members year after year after year. And ultimately, we felt that it would be a more efficient use of our time and our resources. Even though AmeriCorps and grant-tied funding can feel like it's inexpensive, it can actually be very expensive in the long run with the amount of staff time it takes to recruit, train, hire those members, and then also to supervise folks who are pretty new to the workforce and are not necessarily as invested as they could be if they were staying with an org year after year. You can go to the next slide, Daniel. So we decided to shift to 3 full-time salaried garden educators that are split across our 12 schools. I think, was it Ashley who said that you're now in 4 schools? That's also what our educators do. So they have Mondays as a planning day, and then they are in a different school every day of the week. One way that we really make that work is that they have like one day a week that is devoted to each of their schools. So like Tuesday is Oakdale Elementary School Day for Tom. So every Tuesday he's at that school, and that really helps the schools to know when to expect them, and it helps the staff to really not feel like their schedules are crazy. They just always know it's Tuesday. This is my day to be at Oakdale. So we still deliver 7 lessons a semester to all of our students. We split them by seeing kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade in the spring, and 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in the fall. And then the garden educators are also the lead on garden maintenance for each of their schools. We also hired on a really amazing, strong, experienced program director who had a history in the school system, and she provides a ton of support for these 3 full-time educators. We wanted to make sure that it was a great that the folks who are coming into these full-time positions would want to stick around, and so we made it work so that we could pay them a living wage for our area, that we moved to a 35-hour work week and a flexible schedule so that folks that are in these full-time positions can be managing their own workflows in the way that works best for them. They show up for class, but if they have an appointment or an errand that they need to run, they do that on their own schedule. We also provide generous PTO. We shut down the office for a week in the summer, a week in the winter. In addition to that, folks get up to 5 weeks, depending on your tenure, of PTO, paid healthcare, retirement match, and then a family-friendly culture, which felt really important in order to be able to keep people on board for as their lives changed, we've welcomed many babies into our work family now, and that feels like a really important part of getting people to stick around. You can go to the next slide, Daniel. The results of shifting to this model is that we now have 2/3 of our garden education staff has been with our organization for 7 or more years, which is amazing. It's a big difference from having to bring new people in every year. They're building long-term relationships with their schools, with their students, with principals at their schools. They're at their schools that they've been at they teach at the same schools year after year. So they really have become integrated into their school families to the point where now they have like kids that they taught when they were in 5th grade are now in college at the University of Alabama, and they're coming back to volunteer with the same garden teachers that they had in elementary school, which is amazing. Part of what's amazing about building these relationships at the schools is it means that school leaders and parents and teachers are willing to go to bat for us when it comes to being advocates for our program, whether it means showing up at a school board meeting and advocating for funding, writing letters of support to grantors, or just being individual donors to our program. Building these relationships with these schools has actually inevitably made us more fiscally sustainable because we have these strong ties to our community. Having less turnover is also way more efficient for us. We're spending less time training and more time honing our programs, and it ultimately means that we have higher quality programs. So the key takeaway from my message is that that a stable, well-supported staff equals stronger programs, stronger relationships, and can ultimately lead to a stronger, more stable organization. I know it's a really tough time to be losing grant-funded positions, and I hope that ultimately it can be a challenge that can lead to sustainability and stability for your organizations. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nicole. That was really awesome. And I love the piece that you said on investing on people makes such a big difference in long-term sustainability. So thank you for sharing your expertise today. And also, once again, join me in giving a round of applause to all our amazing presenters that came up today to share their expertise, their solutions, and hope that it builds connections with you all. So thank you guys so much. Really, super appreciate you all. We're going to move into our Q&A portion of today. So if you have a question for any of the presenters or for all the presenters, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and I will be reading them off. I'm so sorry, reading them off to them, and then we'll have about 5 minutes of Q&A, and we'll move up to our last portion of today. So if you have a resource that you'd like to share, or come off mute and just share your wisdom as well, or any connections that came up, or any presenters, if anything else came up for you, that'll be a great time to do it. So first, we'll do our Q&A, and we already have one question. So Nicole, the first question is for you. Where does your funding come from?
Yeah, thanks, Jill. So 50% of our funding is from the 2 school districts that we work together with. We have renewable contracts with them year after year, and then 25% of it comes from a mixture of grants, local foundations to larger state grants. But we try to stay away from position-tied grants. So most of it's unrestricted funding from grants, and then the other 25% comes from individual donors, business sponsorships, garden sponsors, and fundraisers.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nicole. And thank you so much, Jill. If you have any other questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, or if it's easier for you to just come off mute. I think that should be fine for today as well. So
Nicole, do you mind sharing your email
I'll
either
put it, yeah, I'll
privately
put
or
it in the chat.
publicly? Thank you.
yeah, and that also reminds me, all of the presenters' emails and contact information we will share in a follow-up email resource handout. So you'll be able to have the emails for all of our presenters today. We have another question. Rebecca, I believe it's for you. How would someone approach partnering with someone in your position?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's a great question. So I have people reach out to me all the time wanting to partner with my program. What I usually ask for is a proposal. I want to know exactly what you would like to offer the district and our students, and what it would look like, what the cost structure would be, what the objective would be. And that way I can see if it aligns with my program. And if so, I can then see if we have the funding for it. I hope that helps. But it's really helpful, rather than just do like, hi, I want to get involved with your program. Just, I need to know what you are offering, if that makes sense.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. I actually have a question for all of our panelists. I keep wanting to call you panelists. It feels like a panel. Did you all have to scale back any sort of programming, or it sounds like you were able to continue, or how did you make that decision of like, oh, was it good to reassess, to have the opportunity to reassess, and how did you navigate that?
Daniel, when we moved models, we shifted to like a pretty like structured schedule, so that teaching at 4 schools wouldn't be super overwhelming for the educator. And part of what that meant is that instead of teaching all of our students either year round, every other week, or for 1 semester, seeing them every week, we now only see them for 1 semester every other week, which felt like a big compromise at the time. But now I'm learning that that's actually still quite a bit for school garden programs, like for kids to come out to the garden 7 times. for every child to get to spend 7 lessons in the garden during the course of a semester, and to do that every year of elementary school is actually seems pretty good to me. So we really would like to go back to doing it more. You know, I'd like to see them out there on a weekly basis, but it allowed us to continue our relationships with every single one of our schools without having to say like, oh, we got to pull out of this school or that school.
Yeah, and Daniel, I mean, I had to scale way back again. You know, usually summer enrichment is a huge program for me, and a lot of money for my partners. And just every day, I'm either teaching or my partners are teaching, and we're doing multiple field trips. We reach every grade band from pre-K through 12th grade. So this was a huge scale back, and I insisted on pivoting to my district. I actually met with the superintendent because I said, I've been building these partnerships for many years. Also, this is what our families want the kids to experience during the summer. And I understand the reasons why we can't do it this summer because of this contractor and, you know, various things that were not communicated between the district and the contractor. But you know, we need to do something. And they were luckily a yes, you know, a big yes. They appreciate the program, and they were very apologetic that this, you know, happened. And it really was just solely down to funding and having to contract out like this. But you know, I needed to give my partner something, and I needed to keep students connected to those garden spaces for the summer, you know, before we go into the new year.
Yeah, I'll just throw in that Living Classroom did have an AmeriCorps member for our first year in the Mountain View School District, and it was during that year that we realized that there were some issues that I think that Nicole really talked about. Is that we realized that we wanted to have an instructional and garden staff that had the longevity and that did also become a part of the school community. And we have that very same situation because we keep our staff normally for a very long period of time. And the only reason they leave is because they're moving out of town or or having a baby or something like that. And so I think that, you know, we kind of figured out early on that, you know, not having any clue that the funding situation would be like it was today, but even before that, that the investment and professional development and sense of camaraderie and teamwork amongst our staff led to just an excellent result in terms of our programming and teacher evaluations and just welcoming us into the school community.
Yeah, I really love how much you all have been talking about the importance of like relationship inside the organization as well as outside.
Mhm.
Of course, with the need for funding, obviously, because we want to keep people and pay them for their time, but also that those additional pieces like really
Yeah.
keep both partners and um staff in the organization. So and they make it happen. So yeah. Are there and there's a question for everyone as well. Not necessarily on subject matter, but how do you share successes with your program partners? Do you collect data from your participants?
I'll go ahead and jump in on that. Yeah, one of our funders is a healthcare provider, and they have very specific metrics that we have to meet every year. And yes, so we do have to provide statistics, the basic stuff, how many, you know, 1,000 lessons and you know, how many different, you know, classes and how many students. But they had two metrics which relate directly to whether we're changing the dietary habits. Do we have evidence of students are eating more fruits and vegetables per day, and what is their understanding and knowledge of you know, what a healthy lifestyle looks like and things like that. And it's challenging for an organization like ours because you know, like Nicole's group, you know, we average about the same, around 7 encounters per day. We also have a farm to lunch program in which we we harvest produce from our school gardens that are not being used for lessons, and then we have the district child nutrition services, serve that food, and then we get tallies like, is this the first time you've ever had kale? And and by the way, are you, how many servings? It's tricky, how often do you eat fruits and vegetables? And so it's tricky to do, but yeah, we have to provide that kind of nutrition based information. But I'd be interested in other organizations and how they were able to meld in surveys and data from the surveys with limited time with the students.
I can speak a little bit on that. I'm going to put in a plug for the SGSO Promising Practices on Program Evaluation. I basically we modeled a lot of our evaluation after what we found on that page. And one of the things that I learned is that it's a lot easier to survey teachers about their students and what they observe in their students than it is to survey every single student or every single parent. And so what we do is we survey our classroom teachers who come out with their kids to every garden lesson. And then they are with their kids all year long. So they're the ones who really get to see the changes in their kids over the semester of gardening. And we asked them questions like, on a scale of strongly agree to strongly disagree, the garden program helped improve my students' willingness to try new things, my students' willingness to try new fruits and vegetables, my students' understanding of specific science concepts, my students' enthusiasm to attend school. We have a whole list that I ultimately pulled a lot of from the Promising Practices page. And I think from John Fisher specifically, I think had maybe an example of a Life Lab eval on that page. But we survey teachers at the end of every semester. It's a Google form that we incentivize by putting them into a drawing for a free Schoolyard Roots t-shirt, which goes a long way to getting teachers to fill it out because it's hard to get teachers to fill out forms at the end of the semester. And we send them a lot of reminders. So yeah, and we share those results in our annual report that we mail out to all of our program partners. I present about it all over town at the school board, at the different folks who sponsor us. Yeah.
So for me, just specifically to how we share successes with our program partners. So we do feedback surveys as well. We usually do at the beginning of the school year, we do a survey testing really like what do kids know about certain concepts, for instance, like compost, and then at the end of the semester or the end of the school year or the end of the lesson, depending on what that partner is doing and how, what the push in looks like in terms of time period, we'll do a closing survey to see if their knowledge has improved or if they now like this vegetable or whatever. And for me, specifically for these Get in the Garden surveys, I had a QR code in the garden that families could scan and just see. It was very short. It was like, was this a positive experience? What did you like? Do you have room for feedback? Things. It was like 4 questions, just so that I could, if I do have to repeat these again, I, can do it like that. And I always I was present at all of these workshops to support my partners if I wasn't leading them. And I took, demographic data and things like that, which they always ask me for, my partners.
Thank you all. We only have a few more minutes together, but for this portion, I'm going to open it up, and please feel free to continue asking panelists questions. But for this piece, we're just going to move into our open discussion time. So if you have something you'd like to share in the way of resources or something that your program does, please feel free to either write it in the chat or just come off mute. And feel free to just share how your program is addressing these pivots or any connection that has come up for you as well. Or feel free to continue asking questions, not just to our presenters, but just to everybody here. This is kind of like an open space for any thoughts or questions that you might have. Do you want to ask any other members of the network? But feel free to continue to ask questions to our presenters as well. I do have a question for everyone here. And it's and maybe even to get us started, if how have you all found have you all found any success in maintaining your core programming and operations with maybe less resources, whether it be with funding, with people? Um, and if you have found success in kind of doing the same or more with less, how did you do it? For this, feel free to drop in the chat, or feel free to come off mute.
I feel like I'm talking too much, but I will just say it was very quiet. So I abhor, a vacuum. So I've had my partnerships, I've been building my partnerships for 10 years now. So a lot of my supplies like soil, um, materials, seeds, etc., I get donated through my partners. So that's extremely helpful. And that's really 10 years of relationship building.
One thing that Living Classroom has done, in addition to the in-kind materials donations, which are available, also free mulch from the tree trimming companies, things like that, is that we're in an area where there are a lot of larger corporations and they have these team building activities, and we partner with places like Google and Microsoft and places like that, and they'll send like 25 volunteers out for about 3 hours, and we have them do like a major garden project. So it does take planning, and people to supervise very closely, because they don't always know what a shovel really looks like and what's a wheelbarrow, things like that. But they get a lot of work done, and then often some of the companies will provide a donation based on the number of employees times the number of hours times a set hourly amount, let's say $25 an hour or whatever it may be, and then you get a little bit of funding in place. So service groups, also like Kiwanis of Rotary and others, also can provide that, as well as youth organizations, to really enhance if you have limited garden maintenance staffing.
Vicky, I'll just second that. This is something I learned from Selma, who's the ED of the Gardeneers. She was like, people from a corporate company are not volunteering in this garden without paying money for it. And I think that that's a great approach. So we started, we call it, it's like a corporate volunteer day, and it costs, because it costs your organization a lot of money to run that. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of materials. And so now, the idea is that if you have a corporate group that wants to come volunteer, for us, they're paying between $2,000 and $3,000 per volunteer day.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes straight out of their marketing budget. And, it includes like dedicated social media shout out and, photo opportunity. And so in a lot of ways, that's not a lot for a big corporation to pay for marketing.
We should add that to our funding promising practice, actually.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. We only have a couple more minutes, so I just want to give another call. Is there any other questions or any other pieces of wisdom when it comes to pivoting in your programming, or maintaining your operations, that we would like to share, or any other questions before we wrap up? in that case, we're just gonna wrap up for today. Again, thank you all so much for being here. I'm just gonna share my our final outgoing slides, and here we go. Thank you all so much for being here today. Last couple pieces, and you'll receive this in a follow-up email. We love to hear your feedback about our virtual gatherings and our virtual gatherings. So there will be a link in the chat for feedback on this specific virtual gathering, and we want to know how you experienced it, what other topics you would like to see a virtual gathering or open discussion focusing you would like us to focus on as well, or any other ideas that you might have for any future gatherings. So definitely, we really want to hear your feedback so we continue to cater to what your needs are, especially during this time. And again, thank you so much for presenters and to all of you for attending today. If you would like to stay in touch with us, please follow us on Instagram at SGSO-Network, on Facebook as well, so facebook.com/SGSO-Network. Or if you have any other questions you would like to connect with us directly, do send us an email to info@sgsonetwork.org. So again, thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate really appreciate having you here. Hope you took lots of amazing ideas to take back to your program, and hope to see you again soon at a webinar or virtual gathering. So thank you all so much again. Take care. Bye, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.